Each candidate will get a 2-minute opening statement. The facilitators will ask a total of 5 questions, and candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer. If the candidates go past the 2-minute mark during their responses, the timekeeper, facilitator, or moderator will mute their mic. There will be a timer countdown from 2 minutes with a warning bell at the 30-second mark and a more abrupt bell when the time is actually up. The timer will be pinned to the Zoom screen next to the candidate that's speaking, so everybody and the candidate should be able to see. Each candidate will get a 2-minute closing statement, and after the superior candidates are done, we're going to thank the candidates and ask them all and their campaign staff to jump out of the Zoom meeting so that we as a community can have a brief discussion around the importance of local elections. Unfortunately tonight, Dick Pufall has had an unforeseen family emergency, so he won't be making it. Just wanted to let everybody know before we get started. And then we'll get into some general guidelines for using Zoom. In general, when folks are speaking, it's helpful to have your sound on mute to keep all of the outside noise to a minimum. We want to give the person speaking the entire floor and the space to say what they plan to, especially with the responses being timed. So until the discussion portion of our event at the end, we will ask that community members are listening and remain on mute, or we will mute you on our end just to keep things running smoothly. You can use the chat to comment. However, all the comments should remain respectful, and we have the right to reserve the chat, to turn off the chat if the comments don't remain respectful. Under different circumstances, if we could have held this forum in person, we would be in community and we'd be feeling togetherness, and we want the Zoom forum to feel the same. However, the chat will not be a space for candidates to answer or respond to any questions. If you have additional questions for the candidates, you can utilize their contact information and reach out outside of the forum. If you're having trouble seeing who's speaking, in the top right corner of Zoom, there's a button that'll say speaker view. When you click that, you'll only see the speakers and the timing video panels. And the button will then change to gallery view. If you want to click that button, it'll bring you back to seeing everybody in the meeting. We want this to be a protected and sacred space, and we know that we want everybody to feel safe to share and be respected in this meeting. This includes the candidates. If somebody is being derogatory, racist, harassing, or otherwise disrupts the group, as moderators, our folks will remove them to protect the sanctity of our group in the forum. The forum will be recorded, like I said, and shared on our social media afterwards. So any comments that are made are going to be public, and understand that anything in the chat is going to be visible to the community as well. We have another rule called snaps, no claps. Because the sound is tricky on video calls, if you're excited about something that somebody says, we encourage you to visually snap or to use the react buttons, just in case you're not muted and you're not clapping. We don't want to hear any of that while people are trying to get points across. You can also use the react buttons that's in the bottom right corner of the Zoom action panel at the bottom. And it'll show you a little emoji that'll pop up on your video panel, and it's just a quiet and fun way to show support so we don't interrupt anybody today. During our discussion, you can also use the raise hand option. That should also be in the section under the reactions button at the bottom. And that way we can see that you have something to say, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. While the candidates are speaking, again, we hope that goes interrupted, and so we won't be using the raise hand option during the forum itself, only during the discussion time. If you don't have that option, you can also type stack into the chat, and we'll know that you have something to say. And we ask that everybody has patience and understanding in the technical world. Though we have all kinds of great facilitators and moderators with us tonight, technology is not perfect. Even over a year into the pandemic, we all still have technical fumbles. And we want to remind everyone that we're on different levels when it comes to using devices, the internet, and apps like Zoom. So we ask that we're all just patient if any technical troubles do pop up. And lastly, we want to err on the side of best intentions. We know that as human beings, We are continuously learning in this work, and there will be times when we disagree. And when in conversation with each other, we want to speak with the best intentions and listen and respond with the best intentions. So that's all we have for the guidelines of how tonight is going to go and how Zoom works. And then I will start by kind of introducing what we're here for today and what's going on. The team here at Progress North are Northern Wisconsinites, and like our neighbors, we have a deep sense of community in our small towns and rural communities, or a deep sense of identity in our small towns and rural communities. And we know that each one of our small towns is unique in their sensibilities, though we also know that across the region, we hold common values and ideals. We want to make Northern Wisconsin a great place to call home for everybody. And Progress North has a clear vision of a better future for our region, state, and country, where everybody is safe and free. By connecting Northern Wisconsinites across the divides of race, class, gender, ability, sexual orientation, and generation, going all in together, we can ensure that everyone, Black, brown, white, native, newcomer, or lifelong local, can earn a good living and live a good life. We center all of our work around the values of equity, people-centered democracy, and the common good, and know that participating in our democracy on any scale is a matter of public health, safety, security, and success. We as community members, as voters, and as advocates can have the most impact on a local level. The Progress North team are working to make it easier on Northern Wisconsinites to find the information that they need, become educated on local elected positions and the role that they play in our communities, create relationships with local candidates, and have the tools available to them to participate in all levels of democracy, to ensure the success and the safety of all of our communities. So now I am going to kick it to Cheyenne so that she can start off the Ashland Forum with our first round of candidates.
Thank you, Jade. And before we get started, I can't see everyone, so I am gonna say the names of all of the candidates that are in attendance tonight. And if you could come off mute and just let me know you're here, just so I can make sure before we get started. Lindell. Oh, go ahead.
Your sound was a little goofy there, but it just came back.
Can you hear me now? Yes, can everyone hear me?
It's still a little off.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you try saying something one more time? No.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay, sorry, y'all. Okay. Like I said, we'll all have technical fumbles. This was just bound to happen as soon as I said it.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, here we are.
Is it clear?
It's great. It's lovely.
Okay, perfect. So before we get started by asking the questions, I am going to ask that I'm going to say the candidate's name, and I can't see everyone on the screen, so I just want to make sure everyone is here. So when I say your name, can you just say like here or hello? Eric Lindell and Elise Kehle.
Hi there. Here and ready.
Awesome. Emerson Ziehr.
Here.
Awesome. Lindsey Graskey.
Here.
And then Kevin Keener Jr. Kevin, are you there? Okay, well, we're going to get started with the Ashland candidates. We'll hope that he can jump in. He did say he was going to be here, so we will just hope to see him before we make it there. All right. Perfect. Okay, so Ashland Ward 6 candidates, Elise Kehle and Eric Lindell. We're going to start with you, and you're going to get 2 minutes to intro yourself. And I'm going to kick it to Elise to have her 2-minute introduction.
Hi, thanks, Cheyenne. I'm really glad to be here tonight. Thanks to Progress North and Jade and Chelsea and Cheyenne for putting this on. And I guess I'll just get right into it. Ashland is the most beautiful place I have ever seen, most beautiful place I've ever lived in. And I love the people that I live with. I love the people that I've worked with. And I am running because I want to be a partner in City Hall for folks like Philomena, folks like Parker, who are doing such fantastic organizing work, folks like Gina Olbixson, and I've been really, really impressed with what I've seen from Ashland's activist community and Ashland's organizers. And I want to be a receptive voice for when the community is saying that we need something or we don't need something. This means, making sure I'm doing everything I can to get the city to commit to not going another winter without having a homeless shelter. This means doing everything we can to make sure we're making best use of our available resources and safeguarding our lake. This means being a good neighbor to folks in Bad River, Red Cliff, Bayfield, Washburn, and doing anything and doing everything we can to help Ashland recover from the pandemic and build a resilient economy that works with tourism and other things as well. So we've got really a chance to thrive into the 21st century. Thank you so much for the chance to be here. And again, this is a great community and I want to give it my best.
Awesome. Thank you, Elise. And I'm now going to pass it to candidate Eric Lindell for his 2-minute introduction.
Thank you, Cheyenne. My name is Eric Lindell, and I go by his and him. And before we begin tonight, I want everyone to know that our community is in suffering. Kevin Rustin is still missing, and my thoughts and prayers are with the law enforcement agencies and all the volunteers. I was out there on Saturday, and it's very rugged terrain, and I just pray for a good outcome for that family. My wife and I moved here 4 years ago from Superior, and I've gotten to know so many people in this community, and we were welcome to this community. And I've learned so much from people, from small business owners, people that have moved here recently, to people that have lived lifelong residents. And I'm running because our government needs greater transparency in how our budgets are created. We need to have our people have a bigger say in how our tax dollars are spent. Our economy and infrastructure, people in our ward want their roads fixed, they want their sidewalks fixed, and they don't want sewage going into the bay. And so we need to be making sure that we're leveraging all of our resources to make sure that we're applying for grants and using our money wisely on projects to protect our natural resources. We need to increase our access to housing, which is why I support the Timeless Timbers project, which is going to bring in almost 50 affordable housing units. And so I hope that by the end of tonight that I can earn your vote, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome to Eric and Elise. We're going to get started with some questions. One of the things we hope to help our communities with is better understanding the roles and responsibilities of the different levels of elected positions. Please frame your answers to all of these questions in the lens of what you would hope to accomplish at the City Council level as it pertains specifically to your role if elected. And we're going to start with the first question. Ward 6 in Ashland contains the city's historic downtown, and along with it, the heart of small business, economy, and much of the tourist center. After a year of grappling with the pandemic, what role would you as a city councilor play in helping Ashland continue to operate responsibly while adapting and recovering as vaccines roll out? And we're going to pass it to Eric to answer the question first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Cheyenne. I think the biggest thing that our ward's been lacking the last couple of years is really a cheerleader, someone that highlights the different events and shows up to those events, advertises those events, goes into small businesses and talks to those small businesses and builds a relationship with the Ashland City Chamber to make sure that we're promoting and doing everything we can to promote and diversify our economy, and making sure that we're advertising the different events and what we have to offer here in Ashland. All too often, I've heard from small business owners, they feel disconnected from the city, or they don't feel like their voice is being heard. And so they want to see the roads in downtown fixed. They're concerned about, what's going to happen during those ongoing repairs. And so we need a clear line of communication, and we just need to be there for them and make sure that we're working with, making sure that if there's state and federal funds from the CARES Act that they can apply for, that, we're connecting them to resources and making sure that, we talk and bring them in with the city administrator and make sure that their voice is just heard and that they feel, that we're doing everything to help them. And sometimes, it's frustrating when they have a big event and there's no city councilors there. And so I think sometimes it's just showing up and helping them as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm now going to pass it to Elise, Kehle, and if you need me to repeat it, just let me know. I don't want to mess you up since it's been a couple minutes.
Yes. Well, as far as, supporting Main Street, and especially as we're dealing with the pandemic, I think everyone, especially the small businesses who are doing their best to stay afloat, want to see fairness. They want to see that, they're getting rewarded for taking the pandemic seriously and trying to keep their customers safe. So I'm going to be a voice for fair enforcement to make sure, over the next few weeks that, we're actually not giving a perverse incentive for businesses to do things needlessly dangerously. But again, vaccines are coming, and we're all going to be able to, we're all going to be eligible on May 1st, which is fantastic. And so the pressure is very quickly going to turn towards, bringing more attention, bringing more tourism to Ashland. And that's going, I really think that this is a beautiful place to visit and shop any time of the year. And I would very much like to see City Council work with our friends in the private sector and our community leaders to have some event every month of the year. I know that the ski race reroute last month turned out to be quite successful, even under the pandemic. So I want to make sure that we're working on that, and trying to make sure we're always generating new reasons for people to come to Ashland. But the big thing is that it's not just a lack of tourists. It's not just a lack of enthusiasm from local customers that are hurting our local businesses. There are some cases where we've done infrastructure projects that have been very poorly timed and very poorly placed for our business community. And I want to work with residents and businesses to make sure that infrastructure projects are done in the best way for the community and doesn't interfere with business. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric and Elise. We're going to now move on to the second question. After tragic events this winter brought the topic of homelessness in Ashland to the forefront, many residents have identified this as a priority. In times of serious budgetary concerns, what specific ideas would you propose for next steps towards solutions, and how would you go about accomplishing that? And we're going to pass it to Elise to answer first.
Thank you. Yeah, this winter showed how completely ill-prepared we were for something of this scale. And if we'd been trusting in, we have been trusting in private humanitarians and charities for years, and they're doing their best, but this was not adequate this year. And we had people left out in the cold, and we had city government saying that we have no homeless folks, even while our surrounding counties were opening up their public buildings for emergency shelter. I want to see Ashland open, at the very least, a warming shelter, hopefully the start of a full comprehensive community service and housing program by the end of the year. We recently spent millions of dollars on a new police station and jail, and by refinancing, we were able to shave $250,000 off of the planned expenditures of that. My thinking is that if we're willing to spend millions of dollars on locking folks up, we can at least spend that $250,000 we'd originally budgeted on getting a building and getting it renovated, and hopefully a down payment on staffing it. Obviously, I would very much want this to be a project of all stakeholders. If we can get support from the counties or grants, that would be excellent as well. but the first thing is that I'm looking at what we can do with that money that we were going to spend on a jail, and that starts with getting a building. We've got no shortage of suitable vacant commercial buildings in Ashland, and there's no reason why we shouldn't set up a homeless shelter here to make that guarantee that no one gets stuck out in life-threatening weather conditions again. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. And I'm going to pass it to Eric Lindell to answer the second question.
Thank you, Cheyenne. The last couple of years, I've been on the housing committee for Ashland, and this February, I had commented on Facebook on one of my good friends from Up North News about our push to try and get a homeless shelter. And Michael Bassford, who is the director for the Interagency Council on Homelessness down in Madison, contacted me wanting to know more information. I put him in touch with Parker Sterling. I also passed on his email to the mayor, and the mayor has formed a task force on homelessness. And the good news is that they are closing in on a building. They have brought together people from the different nonprofits in our area that are working very diligently to use the CARES Act and provide funding to get this off the ground. So my expectation is if elected, I'm going to hold the mayor accountable on this and make sure that by the end of summer or by wintertime, we have a full comprehensive homeless shelter. And I believe they're moving in the right direction for that. But at this point, it's about accountability and making sure that that does in fact happen, and making sure that our homeless shelter is an access point for any rehabilitation. If they need help getting a job, if they need help getting connected to a cell phone, whatever it is they need, that we connect it. And then additionally, we need to make sure that we're connecting them to a permanent place to stay. If that, if they lose their home or they've lost their apartment, that we connect them with affordable housing programs. So I'm very confident the city. I was outraged this winter that we didn't do what Bayfield County did, but we are in a fortunate position now, finally, with this task to move in the right direction, and I'm confident it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric and Elise. We're now going to move to the third question. Many times, things we do locally have more impact than statewide or federal mandates. So it's important to position our communities as the best representations of our values. Please talk about the role of a city councilor when it comes to preventing and responding to hate crimes, promoting anti-racism, and confronting other forms of discrimination that plague underrepresented people, i.e. sexism and gender discrimination, ageism, ableism, homophobia, etc. And I'm going to pass it to Eric Lindell to answer first.
Thank you very much, Cheyenne. This fall, on the side of my building, somebody decided to spray up KKK. Now, it was on an alley, and most people would just say, oh, it's graffiti, just walk on by. But I brought it to the mayor's attention. I brought it to the newspaper's attention. I posted it on Facebook. And I also shared it with the local media, because people need to know this happens, and it's not okay. And when you have a position of responsibility, you can use that pulpit and say, this is wrong, and speak out against things. And when people come to you, you can help them. If they're experiencing ageism, how do we connect them with who can help them with their issue, and making sure that access is fair to everybody in our community. But the biggest thing is just not ignoring the problem and pretending it doesn't exist, because it does exist. And so I think when you're in a position of authority, you need to speak up and be protective and be a voice for sometimes people that don't have a voice, or they're scared. I urged the city council several years ago to pass a bill banning conversion therapy in our local community. And that's something that I believe very firmly in, is that, it's very harmful. And so if there's little things that we can do, we shouldn't wait on state or federal government to do it. We should act. And, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected in a position like that, cost me the next election, I'm fine. I can put my head down on the pillow and say I'm okay with that, because we use our voice for right. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm now going to pass to candidate Elise Kehle to answer the third question.
Thank you, Cheyenne. And this is especially urgent now. In the last week, we've seen continuation of just the rush of missing persons cases coming off out of our tribal communities, and we know that that's a case where there's not that much accountability, largely because they can't prosecute crimes committed by non-tribal members on tribal lands, and that makes it really, really difficult. As for what we could do here, it's horrifying to see this at the same week that we saw what was very clearly a racist mass shooting in Atlanta. And I'm transgender. I've lived in the American South. I know what it's like to walk a street always looking over your shoulder. I know what it's like to see someone looking at me and wondering what they're going to do. I know what it's like to suddenly realize there are 3 men with rocks running after me, starting to hurl them. I know what it's like to be grabbed when you're walking past a bus stop. I'm going to listen to you. That's what I can promise. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that city government is accountable, not just in active problems, but also in passive problems. I want us to get the numbers on who is having interactions with the Ashland Police Department. I want to get numbers on our folks who are experiencing homelessness. I want us to look at everything the city does or fails to do based on the lens of what communities are getting affected most heavily by it. Sorry, this is something I take very seriously, and I've lived through a lot of this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you to both candidates. We're going to move to question number 4. As the state legislation prepares to debate the budget, it makes sense to talk about our local municipal budgets. What would be your first priority for Ashland's budget, and how would you suggest securing the funding for that project, program, or reallocation? And I'm going to pass it back to Elise to answer first.
Well, the first priority is the homeless shelter. As we said, that is something that really is extremely time sensitive, and I think we're going to have to look and see. But again, this was a spending plan that we had a couple years back, that we were going to borrow and spend an additional $250,000 on the jail and police station. So I think we should look at that same source and see if that can set us up on a more resilient path and a more compassionate path with getting a building and renovating it for emergency housing. Beyond that, I really want to diversify our funding stream, and I want the city to study increasing the number of public businesses. Like we have our marina, which turns a modest profit for the city, and I want us to look and find more niches in the market where a public enterprise could succeed, could provide an essential service to folks. Whether that's going to be a public real estate business, whether that's going to be a store of some kind. In the event that that cannabis is legalized, I certainly would like the city to open and run a dispensary. But the thing is that increasing the number of these public businesses is going to increase the number of jobs that we can determine democratically will be paid well. These are going to increase the number of jobs that are tied to what our community needs, not what some out-of-town board of directors wants. And I think we really should look at that. There are examples all over the country. There's a publicly owned and operated flour mill in North Dakota. Our neighbors in Red Cliff just opened a public fishing company. We've seen grocery stores. We've seen liquor stores. All of these operated publicly for the interests of the community by the local governments. And I think that's a model that we should look at expanding here. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise, and I'm going to pass it to candidate Eric Lindell to answer.
Cheyenne, could you repeat the question, please, in full?
I sure can. As the state legislation prepares to debate the budget, it makes sense to talk about our local municipal budgets. What would be your first priority for Ashland's budget, and how would you suggest securing the funding for that project, program, or reallocation?
Sure. Thank you. I think it's very important to make sure that we work with the state government to make sure that we do secure the funding for the homeless shelter. But beyond that, once that's accomplished, we need to increase our broadband access. It's a very serious thing when you talk about trying to homeschool kids right now with the pandemic, and giving businesses, it's the number one deterrent to businesses moving here, is broadband access. So increasing our broadband access, getting our roads and sewage improved. Our underground pipes need to be fixed as well. But I really think, like, when it comes to the budget, what I've heard from people is they want a bigger say in their budget, in the budget process, and how we hold the city accountable for where their tax dollars are going. I don't support starting up government-run businesses. Usually the only way they're successful is if they're the first one and the only one. And our small business community is not run in some out-of-state board of directors. They're the people that live and walk in our business community, and I want to fully support them in what they do. And I think we do need to diversify our small business community, but we need to do it in ways that does not undermine them at the same time, or put them in competition against the city at the same time. I don't think that's a good use of our tax dollars. I do think that people want their streets and their roads fixed. They do want to make sure that, their houses that they're living in. One of the things I've talked to some older members of our community is they're concerned about their property taxes going up. So what can we look at to ensure that we're not causing those taxes to go up every year for them? And so I think that's really where we need to follow the governor's example of holding participatory budget listening sessions, and making sure that people have a say in our budget process and that we're responsive to that. Thank you.
Thank you to both candidates. We're going to move to our fifth and final question for this ward. So Ward 6 is arguably the most traffic dense portion of Ashland. And it's no secret that the city has had to be very diligent in terms of planning for infrastructure maintenance and upgrades. If given the chance, what infrastructure projects would you prioritize for Ward 6 and why? And I'm going to pass it to candidate Eric Lindell.
Sure, thank you. Well, I agree that our downtown business area needs to be redone. That's going to take a lot of planning to make sure that we don't negatively impact our business community. So it may have to be done in portions, but I think the people that sometimes the streets that get forgotten about in Ward 6 are back on the everyday streets where people live. There's large potholes. There are sidewalks overrun with grass. This is where our kids play. This is where people drive every single day. And while I do care about what tourists see in our downtown community and where our business people shop, I do want to make sure that the city is rolling out a plan to make sure that, they're fixing those roads in areas that people live, and making sure that we're providing accurate information on when those projects are going to be rolled out and why projects are happening when they're happening. So that to me would be the priority, is making sure that residential areas are fixed first, because that's where our people live. And it's tough because you hear people say, well, the sidewalks downtown are in bad repair, tourists see that. And I agree. When I moved here, I noticed some of that too, but at the same time, and I'm not negating the fact that people do live downtown and these do need to be fixed, but it's a much bigger project than perhaps some of the roads in, 3rd and 4th Street can be patchwork, at least to make it so that people aren't going into potholes every spring. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm now going to pass to candidate Elise Kehle to answer.
Thanks, Cheyenne. My first priority is, as you say, the 6th ward is probably the highest trafficked area, and that to me that means that we've got the most urgent burden to protect the lake from our ward, which is we need to make sure we're protecting the lake against runoff. My first priority for infrastructure would be barrier gardens or rain gardens of plants that can catch runoff, like the Sustainability Commission's been pushing for, set up between our roads and parking lots and the bay, so we can cut down on motor vehicle pollution affecting the water. By the same token, sewer repair and renovation would be one of my highest priorities. The lake is our future for water, our future for tourism, everything. So protecting the lake has to be our first priority. As far as fixing streets and access, that's, I think, the case where we want to do participatory budgeting, because that's what I'm hearing most from folks, is that they are not pleased with how the city has been allocating infrastructure repair on roads, potholes, sidewalks. So that is something that I think we should take directly to the voters and present them with different plans of spending on different roads. So in a referendum, they can choose directly which ones they want fixed first. So that way we're going to have public input in every step of the way. Beyond that, coming back to the lake, coming back to barrier gardens, sewer repair, I would also be very interested in solarizing because we've got some great roof exposure, and anything we can do to avail ourselves of that and encourage the use of more solar power. In terms of infrastructure, I also want to make sure that we're getting feedback from surrounding communities, including the tribes, about whether a project has negative consequences for them.
Thank you. And that wraps up our 5 questions for Ward 6. And I do want to take the time to thank Eric and Elise for both being here and answering our questions. You're welcome to stay. We want to encourage with this forum some solidarity regionally. Some of the same issues that affect Ashland are affecting Superior and vice versa. So I find it super important that we're in this together, despite this being two separate city councils. So thank you for your time. And I'm now going to move to Ashland Ward 10. This is candidates Dick Pufall and Emerson Ziehr. As mentioned earlier, Dick Pufall was unable to make it tonight, but we do want to allow Emerson the opportunity to share their responses to the questions that we do have. So I'm now going to kick it to Emerson Ziehr for a 2-minute introduction.
Hey, 1 second, Cheyenne, they didn't do their closing statement.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to go back. I thanked you too soon, but regardless, thank you. Eric and Elise, you are going to have a chance to do your closing statement, so I do apologize for missing that, and thank you to whomever shouted that out. So we're going to go to, who just went last? Elise did. So we're going to kick to Elise for your 2-minute closing.
Well, as you've probably heard, I'm Elise Kehle, and I'm running for City Council Ward 6. I really think this is a great opportunity for us to work on providing homes, increasing the number of jobs, and making sure we go about Ashland's recovery in the most democratic way possible. I want everyone to be involved in this, and I want everyone to feel they're being heard. I'll be restarting the week, in the event I win, I'll be restarting the weekly listening sessions at coffee shops, small businesses, as soon as it's safe to do so, online if it's not, but at this point it looks like that should be viable by late spring, early summer. The promise I wanted to make to you, same promise I made at the first forum, which is that you're not going to be ignored. I recognize that a lot of our struggles, dreams, and work is going to be different. And I recognize that we have had a lot of different experiences. And I just want to make a promise that I'm going to listen to everyone. And I want everyone to feel as welcome in Ashland as I have. I mentioned before how some of the things that I've experienced in other places, and the fact that that hasn't happened to me here is an incredible gift. This community has welcomed and I think even protected me, and that means a great deal. I will be doing everything I can to make sure everyone else feels that way. Again, this is a beautiful place, and I want to make sure that the good experiences I've had here can be shared with everybody else. And I recognize that that's not always been the case. My goal is, and that's my goal, to listen to everyone and make sure everyone can feel welcome and safe in Ashland, Wisconsin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elise and Eric, and I totally did not mean to skip over your closing. So I'm going to pass it to Eric for his 2-minute closing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheyenne. And thank you, Progress North, for hosting this tonight. And thank you, everyone, for coming out. I'm running tonight because we need greater transparency in how our government operates. We need to give people a bigger say in the budgetary process. And I want to hold public forums and listening sessions. And if I have to deliver a weekly newsletter, I'll hand deliver it and pay for the stampage myself. But it's something I'm committed to, is making sure that people know what their city councilors are doing, and making sure we're utilizing technology like Zoom or GoToMeetings to host listening sessions. Because all too often, the last couple of years, policy's been created with hardly any input from the public. I'm committed to making sure that our small business community feels that they're being listened to, and forming those partnerships to support them, and working with Northland College and Ashland Chamber of Commerce to see what green technology jobs we can bring to our area and how we can diversify our tourists. I want this to become a destination, not just, I work at a local hotel, and a lot of people are just, they're passing through or they're visiting for a day. I want it to be someplace they spend a couple of days at and go kayaking and go parasailing and enjoy the bay like we enjoy it all year round. I'm also running because I want to make sure that we have access to affordable housing. I'm proud to support the Timeless Timbers project. It's a much needed and realistic policy. It's a public-private partnership, and I'm committed to forming those partnerships that I've experienced bringing people together to get things done to build a stronger community. And that's really what this is about, is bringing people together to form realistic policy goals and making sure that everybody has a seat at the table and feels heard. And I've knocked on people's doors that have my opponent's yard sign. And I know they're not going to vote for me, but I told them, I said, if I win, come see me. I'm your voice. I will represent you. So please don't feel like, we're on opposing sides, because we are all in this together to build up a stronger community. And I'm committed to that for everybody. So thank you for your time tonight. And I hope I earned your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you again. Once again, thank you to candidates Elise, Kehle, and candidate Eric Lindell. I am going to move us along to Ward 10. Ashland Ward 10 candidates are Dick Pufall and Emerson Ziehr. Emerson Ziehr is here with us tonight, and so they're going to get a chance to answer these 5 questions. And I'm going to pass it to Emerson Ziehr for their 2-minute introduction.
Hi, I'm Emerson Ziehr. I'm running for Ashland Ward 10. I use they, them pronouns. I am a union worker at at one of the local coffee shops, and I'm working to unionize my workplace. As a representative for Ward 10, it would be my aim to bring greater democracy to the people of my ward. At this current moment, Dick Pufall, who I'm sorry cannot join us tonight, and offer my sincerest condolences for the family emergency and hopes that it turns out in a positive regard. Is my goal, or Dick Pufall has held this seat for 30 years and also represents our ward on the county board. It is my aim to democratize that further and bring in more voices to provide more adequate representation to all of the people of my ward. In addition to that, I will be focused on participatory budgeting and engaging with my constituents on the ground level in a day-to-day basis, either through weekly coffee hours or by knocking on their doors and continuing to canvass throughout my term as an alderperson. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Emerson. And just a heads up, the first spell is just the warning. I just wanted to make sure folks knew. All right, so we're going to move into the question portion. As mentioned before, one of the things we hope to help our communities with is better understanding the roles and the responsibilities of the different levels of elected positions. Please frame your answers in the lens of what you would hope to accomplish at the city council level as it pertains specifically to your role if elected. And with the first question, we'll begin by revisiting a topic from our last section. Please talk about the role of a city councilor when it comes to preventing and responding to hate crimes, promoting anti-racism, and confronting other forms of discrimination that plague underrepresented people, i.e. sexism and gender discrimination, ageism, ableism, homophobia, etc. And I'm going to pass it to candidate Emerson Ziehr. You have 2 minutes.
One of the primary functions of a city council representative is to act as a conduit from their citizens to the services they need. A citizen should feel comfortable and confident reaching out to the city council person at any time about any issue. As a city council rep, it would be my goal to provide that conduit for my citizens in need. If a citizen was, or if a constituent was feeling or had experienced discrimination in their workplace, I would want to be able to help connect them with the services they need to address those concerns and receive the justice they need within their workplace. I also recognize that a lot of hate crimes and discrimination happens on a systemic level and needs to be addressed at that level as well. One of those concerns is through the police force. I suspect, or it is my belief that the police in Ashland are in their jobs out of a good place. They want to help the people in the city and they want to serve the people. Sometimes the underlying biases can get in the way. Bias training is a route worth pursuing within the police force. Additionally, additional social services need to be funded. The homeless shelter that has been being proposed would be a great step in that direction. Additionally, direction needs to be provided towards the services we already have. One of the big hate crime problems going on in our region is that Highway 2 is a major conduit for human trafficking. And that can be limited more by intentional enforcement of traffic laws and stop.
Thank you, Emerson. And we're going to move forward to question number 2. So Ward 10 is home to a large piece of land ready for development on Highway 2 between 22nd Avenue and 23rd Avenue East. It has sparked a lot of community conversation about what kinds of developments should be in certain places, what kinds of developments the city truly needs, and what, if any, role the city council has on attracting certain kinds of developments to Ashland for either publicly or privately held land. Please talk about your role as a city councilor, if elected, in terms of future development goals. What priorities would you advocate for? What incentives would you deem appropriate for developers? And I'm going to pass it back to candidate Emerson Ziehr. You have 2 minutes.
My priority in the new development would be to get my constituents' feedback on it. I want to hear from every single person in the ward as to what they would want to see in that area. I do not want to be making that decision on my own. I don't think that I know the best solutions for this city. But I think that as a representative, I can collect the voices of my constituents and bring them together to create a solution that works for everyone. I am open to a lot of different options as far as how that land is developed, and don't necessarily have my own personal priority on it. The second part to that question is what kind of tools are appropriate for the city to use in drawing in developers and development. I think it depends on the type of development. There are lots of different ways that a city can develop. And it is important to emphasize things that will be here for the long haul. Stuff that will still be around and assisting in our community 7 generations from now. In that vein, I would not support personally offering large contributions to multinational or even national corporations to come into our town and develop businesses that may only be here for a few years, while also causing competition for many of our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Emerson. We're going to move to question number 3. So let's go back to budgets. What would be your first priority for Ashland's budget And how would you suggest securing the funding for that project, program, or reallocation? And I'm going to pass it back to Emerson. 2 minutes.
Yeah. Again, my first priority would be to get full constituent input on any aspect of the budget. One thing that I've heard from the people in my ward as I have knocked on their doors canvassing is that the sewer system is a big priority. They are concerned about it. We need to address that as soon as possible. A sewer system will last generations and does still need to be updated more frequently than every 100 years. By finishing the sewer renovations in a timely and efficient manner, that will provide protections to the lake, and which is the source of all of the tourism for our area. Additionally, I think that we need to explore all avenues possible for revenue generation. At this point, city budgets are tight and often need that often ends up with calls for increasing tax revenue. I don't know that tax revenue is necessarily the best source, especially when it's implemented through regressive taxes like wheel taxes or sales taxes. Those taxes do not necessarily benefit everyone and cut into the money that everyone needs to survive in the day-to-day. I think we need to explore other alternatives, including grant funding and potentially municipal business, as a way to increase revenue overall throughout the future, with businesses that will be with us for the long haul and provide for the needs of our constituents. Longevity.
Thank you, Emerson. And we're going to move to question 4. So following Ashland's recent adoption of a new comprehensive plan, there has been much talk about the East End. Some feel it should be more connected to downtown and the West End, for example, extending 6th Street across the Bay City Creek Ravine. Others felt that the slight separation from the rest of town created a unique section of the city that should be preserved. Meanwhile, the East End has seen a lot of development, and changes have not only changed the way it looks, but drastically increased the amount of activity and traffic, especially along the Highway 2 corridor. If elected to represent the ward farthest east, what would your philosophy be, and what would you do to represent and highlight the unique charm of the East End? And I'm going to pass it back to candidate Emerson Ziehr. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I would encourage the development of a unique East End personality and community. One thing that has been lost over the past few decades, maybe even the last century, is local community cultures. I would promote expansion of local community festivals or even picnics as a way to meet neighbors and build a community within the neighborhood, which would be a great way to encourage further investment from the residents of this ward into the success of the ward in the future. A lot of the best ideas for how to change our society and change the way that our community would function have to come from the members of our community. And those ideas are best generated through collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Emerson. And we're going to move to question number 5. So we'll close by revisiting the topic of homelessness in Ashland. What specific ideas would you propose for next steps towards solutions, and how would you go about accomplishing that? And back to you, Emerson, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, the first step is getting something underway, a comprehensive homeless shelter, like Eric Lindell was talking about in the previous portion of this forum, would be a great first step. And it sounds like the housing committee is already on that task and has started to take the first steps necessary. As a representative of this ward, I would lend my full support to that project and work to get the funding secured and ready to go for that project to advance it before the next snow flies. In addition, I think it's important to work with the community groups that are already in place. The Ashland Homeless Help Group that is largely run by Jenna Olbixson and Parker Sterling is doing great work right now. And I believe that they have many of the ideas in place already for how we can take some of the next steps in addressing homelessness, and would like to work with them to find the solutions that work for the people they've been working with, and work with the people that they've been working with directly to hear what they need and how best to suit those needs. Thank you.
And my apologies, Emerson, the timer didn't show up on the screen, so I do apologize for that. But thank you for your answer, and we are going to move to a 2-minute closing. So Emerson, you have 2 minutes to offer your closing statement. I do encourage all candidates, when you are doing your closing, please drop your contact info in the chat once you're done. So if anybody has additional questions, they can reach out. So 2 minutes to you, Emerson.
Yeah, thank you, Cheyenne, and thank you, Progress North, for hosting this forum. It's been nice to talk to you all, and I hope I gave you a sense of who I am as a candidate and how I can play a role in representing the people I am running to represent. If you want to get in contact with me, you can either contact me at facebook.com/Ziehr410 or emziehr97@gmail.com, or by phone at 715-225-5487. And I will post all of those in the chat as soon as I am done speaking. Thank you all for joining us, and it has been a pleasure to speak to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Emerson, and I do want to extend very much thank you for joining us joining with us today. It's been great to have you, and I'm now going to move us in to the Superior District 10 race. And I just want to say thank you. I had a couple bumps with technology, so thank you all for your patience. I am going to pass it to Jackie Moore. She is going to facilitate the candidates for Superior. Thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Moore. Thank you, Cheyenne, for facilitating the last debate. Before we begin, I just want to clarify that our candidates are here. We are speaking with Superior District 10 candidates. And earlier we did confirm we have Lindsey Graskey on the line. Is that correct?
Yes, hello.
Hello. And
Hi.
then do we have a Kevin Keener Jr. on the line? Kevin, are you with us? All right. I'm going to proceed as though Kevin is not here. So just as we did with Ward 6 in Ashland, Lindsey, I will be presenting you with the questions, and we will start with your 2-minute introduction. So you can take it away.
Okay, great. My name is Lindsey Graskey. I live and own a business in District 10. It's actually located in Superior's Old City Hall on Broadway in Hammond. I grew up in Superior. I went to college here with a marketing and public relations degree with an emphasis in public art. I'm highly involved in volunteering with food distribution in our area, along with bringing awareness to those resources and those opportunities to folks. I continually work on fundraising efforts by utilizing my public platform with my small business for our city. I'm running for city council to use my community involvement along with my passion for our city to build a strong voice to advocate for District 10 here. I'm a champion for small business, and I want to work on recharging our local business community, along with help attract types of businesses to our area and District 10 specifically. I also plan to build and develop connections for planning public art ideas for our city, and that in allowance will help build an identity and honor our historical roots and help build tourism on top of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. So at Progress North, one of the things that we hope to help our communities with is better understanding the roles and the responsibilities of the different levels of elected positions. Please frame your answers in the lens of what you would hope to accomplish at the city council level, as it pertains specifically to your role if elected. So we'll start with the first question. Let's begin with the question that we are asking each of our candidate groups. Please talk about the role of a city councilor when it comes to preventing and responding to hate crimes, promoting anti-racism, and confronting other forms of discrimination that plague underrepresented people. For example, sexism and gender discrimination, ageism, ableism, homophobia, etc. Lindsey.
Okay, as a city councilor in playing in the role and understanding that these things are a necessity to understanding all types of folks in our community, I would like to see myself use my public platform as a way to connect people and have some understanding built through our city even more as we generationally grow. I would love to see a lot more interaction and have the confidence built to have people step forward in order to be able to help and facilitate and basically create a ground for people to understand that what's asked of us as a community in many other ways than just one way. So, thank you.
All right. The next question is continuing with that theme. Some time ago, it was proposed in the city of Superior to add Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a paid holiday for city employees. It never made it out of committee and the council and to the council floor for a vote. Would you support this measure if it were revisited? Why or why not?
I would absolutely support having this be brought back up to the council. I think it's a day of recognition that is formative to a lot of reasons for essentially just recognizing the empowerment of such a person in our society. And I think that that recognition needs to be led and be recognized as a community. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. So Superior is the largest municipality in our region, and it is unique in its position as a gateway to Minnesota border community. As such, the experiences there during the pandemic are different than in other places in northwestern Wisconsin. Please talk about what Superior has done well in its response to the pandemic, what it could have done better, and your thoughts on the correct path forward as our communities begin to recover both economically and socially.
Well, as far as our response to us as a city, as far as the pandemic, I think sticking to the state level of even just mandates and having that back, I like the fact that our council was involved in those decisions as well, as far as they representing many angles of our city in order to make sure that all communication levels or all types of folks are being understood through this instead of one agenda. I'm proud of our city and our council for making a grant program to help with businesses and helping them feel secure and confident in the next steps allowed. As we start to pull out of this lightly, I believe that we just need to make sure that we have an emphasis on making sure that in the future, as in months from now, that there is still availability for people that may be still struggling individually, as an economy, and just making sure that there's funds to help allowance as things may get very exciting, but then there may be times where there's going to be ourselves as a council that needs to make decisions that can help with the longevity of our community as far as putting them first and understanding their needs and wants, just as we do now, but specifically to the pandemic and its long-lasting effects that it will have on our community and our economic growth. So, thank you.
Great. Fourth question. No community, big or small, rural or urban, is free from struggles with substance dependence. Ignoring those challenges doesn't work, and sometimes local headlines bring them face to face with the public who relies on its elected leaders to find solutions. In your role as a city councilor, what would you propose as avenues of approach for building long-term solutions to mental health and addiction issues locally?
Okay, well, as I sit here with a personal experience, as many family members of mine deal with addiction and a lot of mental health, I couldn't help more with working tremendously hard on helping bridge this importance of understanding that this is something that is just being talked about, but has been needed to be talked about. I believe there were options years ago, and to see them go away, but at the same time to see that there is this discussion and it's actually being put as a top priority is very intriguing and recharging as far as for myself and my personal experiences. I'd like to take those and use that, I guess, acknowledgement or education or things that I've been through on a personal level to help develop these types of settings, such as even just inpatient or even just an outlet for even just discussing, how to move past even just different ranges of mental health that I think many have maybe not even understood that they need to recognize, or even just an outlet if they want to take the moment for themselves. As a council member, I would love to help with advocacy on trying to connect and communicate and help to, really build the communication stance that we need to start having in this community for lots and lots of reasons that probably need more than 2 minutes to discuss. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is our last question before your closing. For our final question, we will touch on health and public safety outside of the realm of the pandemic. In recent years, Superior has been faced with crises like the refinery explosion, fires and floods that dominate news coverage in the region and put a spotlight on the city's response procedures. As a city councilor, what measures would you take to support the council's collective role toward an effective government response, both in times of managing crises and then rebounding financially and otherwise afterward?
I think as a collective role, in order to understand these certain issues, especially in the past 10 years, I think with our comprehensive plan that is applied right now, going throughout the city and even a survey for until the end of the month, I think we can drastically understand that in the past 10 years, a lot has changed. Infrastructurally, I think that we need to recognize that putting a plan in place as order is where we would, utilize funds. And I would hope if it was in a crisis as such, where a majority of the community was suffering due to a flood or even just a reaction to the refinery, I would hope that there's a lot more measures that we need to understand. And that comes with complete communication with people in the community, their needs, their wants, the things that, honestly put them in a situation of feeling insecure when it's something that is kind of out of our hands or out of, not in our control at that moment. On a fiscal level, I think that it should be adopted, and I think that it should be thought of, and not just when it happens, we will deal with it. And so I believe that a strong presence from the council to be as equally distributed through all districts on a plan if such things were to happen, or to have a plan in place for those types of, actions as such. So thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, your closing statements.
Okay, so specifically, I'm running for District 10 City Council because of my passion for the city of Superior. I essentially want to use this opportunity to be an advocate for the area that I live in, and District 10 could use some recognition. And to use this, I would love to use this platform as a way to, inform our residents and get them more involved and feel more part of this community. Along with that, we have a large population of businesses along in this district that I know that I can be a major representative for that, just for what I've done majority of my life and also what I do right now. I want to make sure that there's our participating level by the city in really holding up the uniqueness that is held within North End. I know that I am the one that understands this district best between me and my opponent, and along with bringing a fresh perspective and into city plans and decisions being made is highly needed, with the ideals of art to community involvement to understanding that we need an identity for first and foremost. And I think I bring an excellent an opposite kind of approach to things than some people on the council. And I'd really love to represent that side of a majority of, I think, people feel about things in our city that are missing or lacking. And I really want to take this opportunity to really capitalize on that. I want to thank everyone for being here, Progress North, especially for having this. And my Facebook is Graskey for North End. My phone number is 218-428-3114. And my email is lindseygraskey@gmail.com. And please reach out to me if you even just want to connect and work together as community members and work on some things.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Okay.
Thank you to Lindsey Graskey, and
Thank
candidate for Superior Ward 10, along with Kevin Keener, who could not be here with us this evening. And I believe my role is done, and I will pass it on to Jade.
Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Thank you so much to our candidates.